Alice's mornings were always a blur, from the moment her alarm went off until she finally rushed out the door. It felt like an endless race against time. As a single mother, balancing work and raising her son, Ethan, was no easy task. Each day, she juggled the pressures of her high-demand job with the tender responsibility of caring for her little boy. That morning, as Alice prepared to leave for work, she was running late again. Ethan, in his usual cheerful way, tugged at her sleeve, asking, "Mom, when are you coming back today? Can we play when you get home?" Alice smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I promise, sweetie. We'll play when I get back. Now, be good for Mrs. Carter, okay?" Ethan nodded solemnly, although his eyes showed a hint of sadness that Alice couldn't bear to acknowledge. She knew he missed her, and she hated leaving him with the sitter every day. But her job as a project manager at a prestigious company, headed by the strict yet brilliant CEO Nathan, was demanding. It paid well, and Alice couldn't afford to take time off. She had worked so hard to get this position, but she felt the weight of her choices pressing on her shoulders every time she left Ethan behind. As Alice rushed out of the door, she cast a final glance at Ethan, his little face peeking through the window. She blew him a kiss, feeling the familiar pang of guilt in her chest. When Alice arrived at work, she had barely enough time to settle into her office before she received a call from the daycare. "Alice, we have an issue. Ethan's sitter called in sick, and we're short-staffed. Is there any way you can—" Alice sighed, her heart sinking. There was no way she could leave work now, not with the crucial meeting scheduled later that morning. But as much as she hated to admit it, she had no choice. "Of course, I'll be right there," Alice replied, her voice tinged with frustration. She quickly gathered her things, dreading the look on Nathan's face when she walked into the office with Ethan in tow. Nathan, the CEO, was notorious for being a perfectionist. He expected results, not excuses, and certainly not disruptions. As Alice stepped into the elevator, she tried to calm herself. She wasn't the first single parent to struggle with childcare, but she felt alone in her challenge. When the elevator doors opened, she braced herself for the awkward moment that was sure to follow. To her surprise, when she walked into the office, Nathan was standing by the coffee machine, his sharp suit and serious expression an all-too-familiar sight. But when he saw Alice, his eyes softened, just for a moment. He glanced at Ethan, who was clutching her hand tightly. And before Alice could even apologize, Ethan spoke up, his innocent voice cutting through the tension. "Hi, Daddy," Ethan said brightly. His face lit up with excitement as he looked up at Nathan. Alice froze, her breath catching in her throat. She stared at Ethan, who had no idea what he had just said, and then at Nathan, whose eyes widened in shock. The room went silent for a few long seconds, the awkwardness almost palpable. Nathan blinked, his usually composed demeanor cracking for just a split second. "Daddy," he murmured, as if trying to process the words. Alice's heart raced as she quickly bent down to Ethan's level, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Ethan, honey, remember, we don't call people that." She was stumbling over her words, wishing she could vanish into the floor. But before she could continue, Nathan's expression shifted. Instead of anger or judgment, there was a quiet understanding in his eyes. He crouched down to Ethan's level, his tone soft and warm. "It's okay, kiddo," Nathan said, smiling gently. "It's nice to meet you, Ethan." Alice stood frozen, unsure of what to say or do. Her heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She had never mentioned Ethan's father to anyone at work, and certainly not to Nathan. Nathan, sensing her discomfort, stood up and addressed Alice with a calm, collected tone. "Alice, it's okay. Don't worry. I understand." But Alice couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed in that moment. She had spent so many years protecting Ethan from the complexities of her past, from the absence of a father, from the truth about what had happened between her and Nathan all those years ago. The memories of their brief, complicated relationship rushed back to her in an overwhelming wave. Nathan had been her first love, the one who had promised to be there. But when their lives had pulled them in different directions, she'd been left alone to raise their child. As she looked at Nathan now, standing there in front of her, she couldn't help but wonder how he would react to the truth. Ethan's innocent words had opened a door to a past Alice had hoped to keep hidden. Would Nathan want to be a part of Ethan's life now? And if he did, what would that mean for their future? Nathan took a step forward, breaking the silence. "I think we need to talk, Alice." In private, Alice's heart sank. What had just happened? Could this be the beginning of something neither of them had expected, or was it the start of an even more complicated mess? As they walked into the conference room, Alice's mind raced, torn between fear and hope. She had no idea where this conversation would lead, but one thing was clear. everything was about to change. The conference room door closed behind Alice with a soft click, and for a moment, she stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. Nathan walked to the head of the table, his usual commanding presence, now softened by a look of uncertainty. He motioned for her to sit, and she complied, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them on the table. Nathan didn't immediately speak. Instead, he sat down opposite her, his gaze fixed on the papers in front of him, though his mind seemed far away. Alice could feel the tension between them, thick and suffocating, but she didn't know what to say. Ethan's innocent words had thrown them both into an unexpected whirlwind, one that Alice wasn't sure how to navigate. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "I'm not sure how to process this, Alice," he said, his voice calm but with a hint of confusion. "I never expected this." Alice took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I didn't expect it either, Nathan," she replied softly, her voice tight with emotion. "I never wanted you to know. I never thought you'd be in Ethan's life." Nathan's eyes softened, but there was a new edge to his tone, a quiet determination. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Why didn't you say anything? You and I, we shared something important, and then you disappeared. I thought you didn't want me involved." Alice winced, the pain of those past years rushing back. The way they had parted had been messy, hurtful. She had been young and vulnerable, and Nathan's career had always been his priority. Alice had tried to make sense of their brief relationship, but in the end, it had left her with more questions than answers. When she found out she was pregnant with Ethan, she had made a decision. She would raise him alone. "I didn't want to complicate things," Alice said quietly. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew things couldn't go back to how they were. You were focused on your career, and her voice faltered for a moment, but she quickly steadied herself. "I didn't want to trap you. I didn't think you want a child." Nathan's expression hardened, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of guilt and pain. "You think I wouldn't have wanted to be a part of Ethan's life?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Alice's heart ached at the rawness in his words. She had assumed so much over the years, but she had never considered how Nathan might have felt. She had never thought about the possibility that he might have wanted to be there, that he might have wanted to know the child they had created together. "I didn't want to put you in a position where you'd feel obligated," Alice said, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't want you to resent me, or resent Ethan. You were on your way to becoming, well, this." She gestured vaguely toward the company beyond the conference room. "You were about to become someone important, and I was just a girl with a baby." Nathan's face softened and he leaned forward, his hands resting on the table. "Alice, that's not how I see you. That's not how I see either of you. I made mistakes, too. I should have been there for both of you. I should have done things differently." The weight of those words settled on Alice's chest. For the first time, Nathan was admitting that things could have been different. It was a relief, but it also stirred up old emotions she had buried for so long. She had moved on with her life, raising Ethan with all the love and strength she could muster, but the idea that Nathan had wanted to be part of their lives all along, it opened a door that she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. There was a long pause, and then Nathan spoke again, his voice steady but filled with something deeper now, something more sincere. "I want to be a part of Ethan's life, Alice. I want to make up for lost time. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to try. I want to be there for both of you. If you'll let me." Alice's breath caught in her throat. Was this really happening? She had spent so many years protecting herself and Ethan from the hurt of their past, and now Nathan was offering her something she never thought possible, a chance for a future together. But even as hope flickered in her chest, doubt crept in. Was she ready for this? Could she trust Nathan again? Could she open her heart to the possibility of a life where Ethan had both a mother and a father? "I don't know, Nathan," Alice replied softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can just forget everything that's happened. It's been so long. We've both changed, and I don't want to risk Ethan getting hurt." Nathan's face darkened for a moment, but then he softened again. "I don't expect you to forget, Alice. I just want a chance to be part of Ethan's life. I don't want to rush anything. I want to take it slow. But I want you to know, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, Alice allowed herself to imagine the possibility of a future where Nathan was involved, where they could build something new together. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be perfect. But maybe, just maybe, this was the second chance they both needed. "I'll think about it," Alice said finally, her voice soft but resolute. "But I need time. I need to know that this is real, that you're really here for us." Nathan nodded, his expression understanding. "I get it. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, no matter what." As Alice walked out of the conference room, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Her heart was heavy with the weight of the decisions ahead, but for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their story wasn't over. Alice sat at her desk, the weight of the conversation with Nathan still hanging heavy in the air. Her mind was a mess of conflicting emotions. She had spent so many years building a life for Ethan and herself, working hard to provide everything he needed. But now, with Nathan's unexpected reappearance, everything felt like it was shifting under her feet. What did it mean for her to open up again, to trust him with their lives? And what about Ethan? How would he adjust to having Nathan in his life, especially after all these years? She had never imagined a scenario where Nathan would want to be involved with him again, and yet, here he was, offering a future that seemed both wonderful and terrifying at the same time. As Alice sat lost in thought, her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Nathan. "Can we meet again after work? I have something I want to talk about." Alice hesitated for a moment before replying. She knew that this conversation wasn't over. It was just beginning, but she wasn't ready to face whatever Nathan had planned next. Still, she couldn't ignore the fact that something had shifted in him, something real. And despite all her fears and reservations, part of her was drawn to him again, the way she had been all those years ago. "Sure, let's meet," she typed back, before quickly setting her phone down. Later that afternoon, the final minutes of the workday seemed to drag on forever. Alice couldn't focus on anything. Her mind kept replaying the conversation with Nathan, the way he had looked at her with those intense, vulnerable eyes. It was as if he was asking for forgiveness, but more than that, he was asking for a chance. By the time the office had emptied out and the last few employees trickled out the door, Alice stood up from her desk, her body tense with anticipation. She grabbed her coat and headed out to the parking garage, the cool evening air brushing against her face as she walked to her car. She found Nathan already waiting for her by the entrance, his dark suit a stark contrast to the golden hues of the setting sun. As Alice approached, he gave her a small, nervous smile. It was a side of him she hadn't seen in years. The usually confident Composo now seemed almost unsure, vulnerable even. It struck Alice in a way she hadn't expected. "Hey," Nathan greeted softly, his voice filled with an unfamiliar tenderness. "Thanks for meeting me." Alice nodded, her nerves tightening. "Of course. What did you want to talk about?" Nathan glanced around, as if gathering his thoughts before speaking. He looked down at the ground for a moment, then met her gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said earlier, about how things have changed, about how we've changed. And I get it. I know you don't trust me right now, and I understand why. But I need you to know that I'm serious about this, about being a part of Ethan's life, about being a part of yours." Alice's heart pounded in her chest. There it was again, the sincerity in his voice, the conviction that made her want to believe him, even if she wasn't sure she could. Nathan continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. "I've been thinking about how I can make things right. How I can prove to you that I'm not the same person I was back then. I want to be involved. I want to show Ethan that he's not alone in this world. I want to be a father to him, if you'll let me. And I want to be with you again, Alice." The last part of his confession hit her like a punch to the gut. He didn't just want to be involved in Ethan's life. He wanted to rekindle what they had, to rebuild a relationship they had both left behind so many years ago. Alice felt a swirl of emotions, fear, hope, confusion. She had never imagined that Nathan would ever say something like this. After everything that had happened, after everything they had been through, she had convinced herself that she didn't need him, that she was better off alone, raising Ethan by herself. But now, standing here in front of Nathan, she wasn't so sure anymore. "I don't know if I can just forget everything that's happened, Nathan," Alice whispered, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Nathan reached out, his hand hovering just above hers before he gently took it in his. "I don't expect you to forget, Alice. I'm not asking you to trust me overnight. I just want to show you that I'm here, for both of you, that I'm ready to be the father Ethan deserves and the partner you deserve. I'm not asking for everything right now, just a chance." Alice stood there, looking into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man who had once broken her heart. But all she saw now was a man who was vulnerable, sincere, and, dare she say it, remorseful. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "You're asking for a lot, Nathan. But maybe, just maybe, you deserve a chance to prove it." Nathan's face lit up with hope, his grip on her hand tightening. "Thank you, Alice. I won't let you down. I promise." As Alice looked at Nathan, she felt a small flicker of hope growing inside her. It wasn't going to be easy. There were so many things they would need to work through, so many old wounds to heal. But for the first time in years, Alice allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could build something together, a future, a family. And for Ethan, she would give it a chance. The days that followed were a whirlwind of uncertainty, but also of small moments of growth. Alice found herself grappling with emotions she had buried for so long. She had spent years convincing herself that her life and Ethan's didn't need anyone else, especially not Nathan. But now, with him stepping back into their world, she couldn't help but wonder if she had been wrong all this time. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt when Alice questioned her decision to let Nathan back into their lives. She still remembered the pain, the heartache that had come with their separation. The years spent alone, raising Ethan, had given her a strength she didn't think she had, and she feared that by opening her heart to Nathan again, she might lose that. But Ethan seemed to sense the change, too. The boy who had once been shy around Nathan was slowly warming up to him, little by little. The first time Nathan had come to their apartment, Ethan had hesitated. But when Nathan crouched down to his level, showing genuine interest in his toys, his interests, the walls around Ethan's heart began to crumble. "Hey, Ethan," Nathan said one afternoon, looking up from a game of chess they had started to play. "How about we build something? I used to love building things when I was your age." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Like what?" "Maybe a model airplane. You ever done that before?" Ethan shook his head, but his curiosity was piqued. "Can we do that, Mom?" Alice smiled softly, watching as Nathan leaned in and began showing Ethan how to follow the instructions step by step. She couldn't deny the small pang of something, maybe it was hope or the beginnings of something new, that fluttered in her chest. Seeing Nathan with Ethan made her wonder what their life could be like if they gave this a real chance. Later that evening, when Ethan was tucked in bed, Alice sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights in the distance. Nathan joined her, his presence almost soothing. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," Nathan said quietly, taking a seat beside her. "Not just you and Ethan, but this. The simple things. The real moments." Alice didn't say anything at first. She wasn't sure what to say. It had been so long since they had shared a quiet evening like this. Just the two of them. It was strange to feel like they were still learning each other, despite all the time that had passed. "I know I hurt you," Nathan continued, his voice sincere. "I know I wasn't there when you needed me. I should have been. And I can't undo that, but I can be here now. For you. For Ethan." Alice took a deep breath, the words she had kept hidden for so long finally spilling out. "It's not that simple, Nathan. You can't just waltz in and expect everything to be okay. Ethan's not some project to fix, and neither am I." "I know," Nathan replied, "and I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can be part of your life, of Ethan's life. Not just when it's convenient or when it's easy, but always. I want to be there for you, Alice." Alice felt a mixture of emotions, pain, hope, and confusion, swirling inside her. She had never expected Nathan to come back into her life this way, but here he was, asking for a second chance. A part of her wanted to believe him, to give him the opportunity to make things right. But the other part of her was still too scared to trust, too scared to let herself fall back into something that could break her heart all over again. "You don't have to make grand promises," Alice said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just show me you mean it, day by day. I need to see that you're really here for us. Not just when it's easy, but when it gets hard. When life gets complicated." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I can do that. I'll show you, Alice. I promise." The days turned into weeks, and slowly, things began to shift. Nathan wasn't perfect. He still had moments when the old CEO tendencies would creep up, moments where he wanted to take control or fix things quickly. But Alice saw the difference. She saw the way he would slow down, listen to Ethan, and try to understand him. She saw the tenderness in the way he would ask about her day, his concern for her well-being genuine and not just a formality. One evening, after a long week, Nathan took Alice aside, his eyes serious but filled with hope. "I've been thinking," he began. "I know we're still figuring things out, but I'd like to make this work. I'd like to build a life with you, with Ethan, not just as a father figure, but as someone who's truly a part of your family." Alice felt a lump rise in her throat as she looked at him. The past had been messy, and there were still things they needed to sort through, but in this moment, she could see the sincerity in Nathan's eyes. She could see that he was trying for Ethan, trying for her, trying for them. "I don't know what the future holds," Alice replied, her voice soft but steady, "but I'm willing to take that chance. With you." Nathan's face broke into a smile, the kind of smile that reached his eyes and made Alice's heart flutter. "Thank you, Alice. I won't let you down. I'm ready for this." As they stood there, the city lights shimmering in the distance, Alice realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. A new chapter. Not just for her and Nathan, but for Ethan, too. A chance to build a family. A real family, despite the struggles and the scars of the past. And for the first time in a long while, Alice allowed herself to believe in the possibility of love and second chances. The days following Alice's decision to give Nathan a chance were filled with small victories and moments of doubt. It was a delicate balance, trying to navigate the new dynamics between them. Alice still felt that nagging uncertainty, the fear that this could all fall apart. But there was also something undeniably real in the way Nathan was showing up for her and Ethan. Nathan had moved cautiously at first, trying not to overwhelm Alice or Ethan. His approach was slow, steady, and intentional. He spent more time with Ethan, not just when it was convenient, but in the quiet moments, playing board games on the living room floor, teaching him how to ride his bike in the park, and helping him with his schoolwork. It was clear to Alice that Nathan wasn't just playing the role of a father figure. He was invested, genuinely interested in becoming part of Ethan's life. And Ethan? He had warmed to Nathan in ways that surprised Alice. The once shy boy, hesitant and unsure, now found comfort in Nathan's presence. He was asking about him during the day, eagerly waiting for him to arrive after work. There was no denying it. Nathan was making a real difference in Ethan's life. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. Alice and Nathan were still learning how to communicate, how to navigate their new roles. The old wounds, though buried, were never too far beneath the surface. Alice sometimes found herself pulling away when Nathan tried to get too close, her instincts still on guard, afraid of being hurt again. And Nathan, for all his patience, occasionally showed his frustration when things didn't move as quickly as he hoped. One evening, after dinner, Alice sat down with Nathan on the couch. Ethan was in his room, winding down for bed. The house was quiet, a rare moment of peace in the whirlwind of their lives. "I've been thinking," Alice began, her voice hesitant, "about what you said, about wanting to build a future together. I don't know if I'm ready for that, Nathan. Not yet. I still don't know if I can trust you completely." Nathan's expression softened, the usual tension in his shoulders relaxing as he listened. He didn't interrupt, just waited for Alice to continue. "I want to believe in this," she said quietly, looking down at her hands in her lap. "But there's so much fear inside me. Fear that this could fall apart. Fear that you might leave again. Fear that I might end up alone, like I always have." Nathan reached for her hand, his touch gentle and steady. "I understand, Alice. I know I've hurt you before, and I know you're scared, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul. If you'll have me." Alice's chest tightened. It was hard to let go of the past, especially when it had left her so vulnerable. But Nathan's words, his actions, they were different this time. He wasn't rushing her. He wasn't demanding anything. He was simply showing up, day after day, proving that he was willing to do the work. "I'm scared, too," Nathan confessed, his voice low. "Scared that I won't get it right. Scared that I won't be the man you need me to be. But I'm willing to try, Alice. Every single day, I'll try." Alice felt something inside her shift, a small crack in the wall she had built around her heart. She squeezed his hand, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm scared of trying and failing," she whispered. "But maybe we can try together." Nathan's face lit up with a smile. The kind of smile that made Alice feel like she wasn't so alone anymore. "We'll do it together, Alice. One step at a time." The weeks that followed brought more moments of connection and understanding. There were still difficult days, still challenges to face, but Nathan and Alice had started to find a rhythm. They were learning to communicate better, to navigate their past mistakes, and to build a new foundation. Nathan had taken her concerns about their future seriously. He started taking on more responsibilities, making sure that he wasn't just a part of Ethan's life, but that he was also contributing to Alice's. It wasn't just about romantic gestures anymore. It was about the little things. The ways he made her life easier, the times he showed up without being asked, the respect he showed for her boundaries. One afternoon, Alice sat on the porch, watching as Nathan and Ethan worked together on a school project. Nathan was explaining something in his usual calm, patient way, and Ethan was listening intently, his eyes bright with curiosity. Alice couldn't help but smile at the sight. It was clear that Ethan had come to trust Nathan, and that trust was beginning to mirror her own. It was then that Alice realized something. She had spent so many years fearing the worst, preparing herself for disappointment. But in this quiet moment, she saw the possibility of something different, a future where they could be a family. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, Nathan looked at Alice across the table, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something," he said quietly. Alice raised an eyebrow, her fork halfway to her mouth. What's that? I think it's time to take the next step. I don't just want to be a part of Ethan's life. I want to build a life with you, a real one. I don't want us to keep living in the past, Alice. I want to move forward. Together. Alice's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting this, not now, not yet. But she could see the sincerity in Nathan's eyes, the commitment in his voice. She could see that he meant it. I'm ready, too, Alice said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. For the first time in a long time, I'm ready. Nathan smiled, his eyes softening. I won't let you down, Alice. I promise. In that moment, Alice knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They weren't perfect, and they still had work to do, but they had something far more important: hope. And with that hope, they were ready to build a future, one day at a time.